And now the musical soundtrack of tonight's programme changes rather sharply.
And I'm feeling good.
Plug-in Baby and Feeling Good First, two of the tracks most associated with Muse, the three-man British band from Tynemouth in Devon, whose albums and energetic live performances have followed Pink Floyd and Queen in combining rock music with operatic and theatrical effects, and lyrics featuring allusions to literature, cinema and science. After 5 studio CDs that have sold 15 million copies and attracted the attention of juries for the Mercury, Brit and Grammy Awards, Muse next week released their 6th album, The Second Law. When singer-songwriter Matthew Bellamy and drummer Dominic Howard came into the studio, I mentioned that at a time of many post-Olympic stories, they can boast a double involvement in the Games, as performers of the official London 2012 track Survival and one of the acts playing at the closing ceremony. Muse are used to live stadium performance, but did closing the Olympics feel like a bigger kind of gig? Matt Bellamy.
Yeah, that's probably a little bit more nervous for that one than we would be normally, I think, obviously, because it was a bigger audience, and also it was the first time we performed in over a year, I think. But it was, as soon as you step on stage, though, once I got the first bit of the song out of the way, I sort of felt relaxed and got into it, and had a good time, yeah.
And I won't give in, because I choose to thrive.
And in that, in what became the official song, that little riff, I'm going to win, I'm going to win, I thought of, as a lot of people will, of Freddie Mercury. Was it a formal tribute to Freddie Mercury?
I've always been a big fan of that band, and we've always been fans of, orchestral music, instrumental music, some classical music, and obviously the theatrical elements are almost associated with operatic music. I think when I'm singing, I tend to go for sometimes very sort of high, sort of almost soprano style vocals. I was quite surprised they picked it, to be honest, because I thought it was a little bit of a heavy track, thematically, and sort of, and the drama of it I thought was probably quite intense for the Olympics. But I'm glad they picked it though, because I think it's quite an unusual choice. But
And in that connection, because Damon Albarn, he's written a musical and a couple of operas now, have you ever thought of going the whole way and writing a show?
I think opera might be a little highbrow for us. I think musical would be more suitable genre.
Well, a rock opera.
Yeah.
Something really odd happened to me with the opening track, Supremacy, because you have to believe this is what happened, but for security reasons, we're given the album in plain wrappers, and we don't have any kind of liner notes or anything, and I listened to it without looking anything up about it. And during Supremacy, that opening track, visually, I started seeing these swirling naked women in silhouette, as in the opening titles of a Bond theme, and I thought this should be a Bond theme, and then I consulted Professor Google after I'd heard the album a couple of times, and you have indeed said this. The influence of Bond music is deliberate.
Well, in particular, I think John Barry is a great arranger, great composer, and I think you can definitely hear a little nod to his orchestral arrangements in the midsection of the verses, And then the ending, we throw in the Bond chord at the end, just as a final nod in that direction.
And have you been in touch with Barbara Broccoli about this, about being used as a Bond track?
We'd love to do something one day. I think we've never really got round to it. It's never really come to fruition. But I think one of these days it'd be nice to do something like that. Yeah.
And that aspect, because you're one of those bands, partly because of the rhythms and because of the huge drama in some of the tracks, that radio, TV producers, advertising agencies, they reach for your tracks, sometimes against your will, as when you took action against Nestle for using one of the tracks. But in general, how much control do you have?
It depends on in the UK and obviously America, I think you have pretty much full control. But in Italy, for example, it's a little bit wild west. It's like anything goes. We found ourselves being used in all sorts of things out there without our permission. But the requests tend to come in. Don't they?
Now we get into the heart of this album, and this is tricky for me because my physics teacher at school asked me to give it up before the exam in case I crash his exam statistics, because I was better at English and stuff. But as I vaguely understand it, it's what's known as entropy, which is that inevitably and irreversibly, a physical system will ultimately collapse will destroy itself.
Yeah, an isolated system. In other words, like something that doesn't have input from energy source outside will eventually obviously decay. That seems to be throughout the whole universe. So, for example, if we closed our mouths, we become a closed system and we die within about a day. So obviously we're open to the energy from the planet, and the planet is open to the energy from the sun. But our solar system is pretty much an isolated system. There's not much energy coming in. So I just became interested in that because when we're making the album, the news seemed to be always about like the financial crisis, the euro crisis, all that kind of stuff, and I became interested in energy's relationship with financial collapse and that kind of stuff. And
all natural and technological processes proceed in such a way the availability of the remaining energy decreases.
And you make a direct connection in track 12, I think it is, track 12, the second law, unsustainable, where we hear there's a woman who is reading the second law of thermodynamics, but she also says an economy based on constant growth is unsustainable. So it does make a direct connection with economics. Yeah,
it was interesting you pulled that up because that was one of the key lines on the album, and I'm not sure if we're going to get done for publishing it, but I actually got that from watching Newsnight, Jeremy Paxman. I'm not sure it was him who said that, but he had a panel of people on just having a sort of wider discussion about what's behind the financial collapse and problems and all that kind of stuff. And one of his panellists just sort of interjected with this point about physics, saying it appears that the laws of physics state that an economy based on constant growth is always going to be unsustainable. And at some point we need to talk about this, And it just struck me as an obvious point that no one really talks about, and I kind of wanted to make that one of the themes on the album. Yeah.
And this is a thematic album, as many of the previous ones have been. Do you declare that theme at the beginning? I talked to a lot of poets who they write a couple of poems and they think, these are all going in the same direction, and then eventually it becomes a collection. But is that how it works for you?
To be honest with you, it kind of almost goes in reverse. I think I try and write the music pretty much without any preconceptions of any kind, so it's always music first, I'd say, then lyrics.
Dominic, we mentioned Queen and the possible influence there. Freddie Mercury, it's said by the members of the band, used to just come in on a Monday morning and say, I've written this little ditty, and then it would turn out to be Bohemian Rhapsody. But give us, is this roughly how it works? Is it all driven by the songwriter?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting his last point about the themes and stuff, because working on the music without the vocal and kind of bringing that to a level that is, for us, is like highly enjoyable on its own has always been a main focus, I suppose, for the band,
And did the rest of you ever say about lyrics, what does this mean, or what are you on about, that kind of stuff?
Sometimes, yes.
Does he respond well?
Yeah, of course. I mean, when,
Well, no, some songwriters don't, notoriously. They,
we were, I suppose, towards the end of the album, like Matt was saying, when the second law title was coming up and we had the newsreader come in to read Unsustainable, we were discussing it and trying to really figure out where it was all coming from, what it was. It was all agreed by all of us.
You're about to depart on another long tour, starting in France and then Spain, UK, Switzerland, Italy, Austria, Hungary, Czech Republic, Poland, Norway, Sweden, Finland, Estonia, Latvia, Germany, Netherlands, Belgium. The dreadful thing that sometimes happens to bands on tour, and there's a whole section on YouTube of forgetting where they are and shouting "Hello Amsterdam" when they're in Dublin and that kind of stuff. You've avoided that so far, have you?
I'm sure, was it you?
I've
Dom did that once.
Yeah. It was, I think only once, but it was in Australia, and I think I said "Hello Melbourne" or "How's it going, Melbourne?" when we were in Adelaide, and I said it.
That must have gone down well.
And Matt turned around and was like, "We're in Adelaide, you dick." And then, but after that, I heard that The Edge from U2
did the same thing.
Had done the same thing, so I didn't feel.
I think his
well, U2 have done it, so I didn't feel too bad. So
yeah,
it happens.
And that, which a lot has been written about the horrors of touring and the treadmill and same hotels, same airports. Do you? I mean, you do a lot of touring. You have to have an attitude to that, do you?
Yeah, we've kind of just become tourists really in our old age. We tend to just enjoy looking around the cathedrals and the museums and stuff like that, and like wandering around the streets and just trying to absorb
very rock and roll.
Try to absorb a little bit of where you are,
And the inevitable question that people always want to know to bands who've been together a long time and stayed together, 18 years now, isn't it? Yeah. What's the closest you've come to disbanding?
To bust-ups. I'd say in between. Well, I don't think we've ever come close to a bust-up, to be honest. But I think we've had moments where we've hit like a wall where we're not sure where to go. And I remember for me it was. I think it was the making of the fourth album was where I just couldn't really come up with anything. It just wasn't happening. You know what I mean? And we spent 2 months in the south of France in a studio where Pink Floyd made the wall, so we obviously sort of thought we were in good company there, good spirits in the room, you know.
But you hit the wall.
But we hit the wall, literally, yeah, and nothing came out. But weird enough, I then wrote a song called Map of the Problematic, which ended up saving that album, I think. But yeah, I think that was the only time really for me. But it's more of a creative issue, you know. We had, the band's had moments, you know. Chris, our bass player, had problems with alcohol for a number of years, and that obviously caused a bit of distance between us and him for a period of time. But he's completely over that now. And this last album we made, The Second Law, was the first time where three of us were all completely on the same page again. You know, so it was nice. It kind of felt like the early days.
So when you're on tour now, do you tend to go to separate cathedrals and separate coffee bars, or do you interact off stage?
No, we certainly do. Yeah, I mean, you know, we'll go and hang around, walk around, go and do some things. Absolutely, yeah.
In three separate cars.
Yeah. Separate transport, but we'll all arrive in the same destination.